Who are these people?
We're gonna be fine. Um. Anyway, you ready for our next story?
Yeah, I
You
need a
ready?
code though.
Okay.
Yeah,
Here it is.
while we're doing that,
It's the same
uh,
code. Funny
oh,
enough. It's just I don't know if it. I don't know if it's
favorite.
like. Oh yeah,
Oh
look,
yeah,
look at
yeah,
that. Cool.
yeah, it works right where it's supposed to. So yeah, okay.
Nice. All right.
Um, but yeah, so
Cool.
yeah, so this story, as I said, those of you who know Roger Meadows, he's prolific in the space. You probably have seen his super chats on Savvy and Heartlands Media in particular. But he's basically, I know him to be like, among other things, the Ballot Initiative guy, because that's what he promotes. And he actually tagged me with this article over the weekend, and I actually read it over the weekend, and I was planning to do it anyway.
Hmm.
But I think, in terms of conversations I had over the weekend, since early in the week online, and then, as I said today, was just a shit show in terms of like, squad members basically siding with corporations in terms of the railroad workers striking, you know. Um, so, and I think, not think, I strongly believe that on the left, we cannot depend. The squad has proven this. We cannot depend on anyone in the federal government to do right by us.
Hmm.
So, that being said, I talked about this a little bit on our midterm stream with Due Dissonance, how certain ballot initiatives passed, especially in red states, like some that secure the rights of abortion, like in DC, giving tip workers larger minimum wage. I believe in Missouri I believe they legalize marijuana. I have to check, but these were done via ballot initiatives. So the question that we're asking is, are ballot initiatives the way to go moving forward, especially right now? We're heading into a lame duck session in Congress. Nothing major, no progressive policy is going to get passed. And then we got the new head boss, Hakeem Jeffries, who's now unanimously voted in as the new leadership for the Democratic Party in the House.
The hoes be knowing.
Those be knowing. Thank you, Anna. So we need another strategy, basically. So the question is, are ballot initiatives the way to go? And I know you and I had a conversation about this, I believe, on Monday night, and I'm sure we'll kind of rehatch a lot of those conversations here. But the article that I was tagged in comes from Common Dreams. It was written by Benjamin Fong and Benjamin Case. Taxing the rich requires more than policy. The left is finally waking up to the power of ballot initiatives as tools to advance egalitarian and redistributive policy. So in this article, it reads, with numerous initiative campaigns around the country raising minimum wages, protecting abortion rights, and in the case of Massachusetts' Fair Share Amendment, taxing the rich to fund public services, the left is finally waking up to the power of ballot initiatives as tools to advance egalitarian and redistributive policy. Where legislators are either too timid or too compromised by corporate interests and wealthy donors, voters tend to back progressive policy, even voters who tend not to choose anything with a D next to their name. Floridians in 2020 and Arizonians in 2016 both went for Trump and increased the minimum wage. Running ballot initiatives offer a path for the left to organize around working class demands without getting sucked into the depressive vortex of democratic machinery and a partisan culture war. As a report recently published by the Center for Work and Democracy at Arizona State University shows, egalitarian initiatives pass at a 60% clip and redistributive ones pass at an astounding 75% rate. With results like these, many on the left are increasingly attracted to the initiative process as a tactical path forward. Unfortunately, this interest has been roused at a moment when the initiative process is under concerted attack from the right. By increasing the number of petition signatures needed, making the signature gathering process stricter, or otherwise raising the threshold for making the ballot, many states are trying to clamp down on citizens' initiatives. In many places, the initiative process is approaching Sisyphean levels of difficulty, irresistible as a means of directly pushing a progressive agenda, but so bogged down by rule changes and oversight by hostile bureaucracies as to ultimately prove impossible.
Pause. Do you know the story of Sisyphus?
No.
Okay, Sisyphus is the guy pushing a boulder up a hill.
Ah.
Yeah, that's Sisyphus. So Sisyphean levels of difficulty. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right.
Sure.
Thank you for that.
Greek.
Listening every day.
Greek.
The example of Arizona is instructive here. Arizona is in numerous ways a bellwether state. From aggressive immigration policy to school choice, Arizonans seemed cursed to preview nationwide political developments in our own perverse laboratory of democracy. Such is the case with 2020's Proposition 208, an initiative to fund direly under-resourced schools by taxing the rich. The measure followed years of organizing work that began with the historical 2018 Arizona teacher strike, part of the national Red for Ed movement. Prop 208 was everything the left could want from a ballot initiative, a tax on wealthy individuals that will go to public schools, backed by one of the largest and best organized labor upsurges in recent memory. And it was popular. Even in the pandemic year, when the typical ground game for this kind of campaign was impossible, Prop 208 passed by a safe margin. At the same time, California voters rejected a very similar measure in Prop 15. Against the caricature of the state as a libertarian bastion, Arizona was ready to tax the rich.
So, back up a little. So essentially, California voters didn't want it because, like, they don't want state initiatives. Is that what they're saying? It seems like that.
Yeah.
Okay, but like Arizona's willing to because libertarian and states can do stuff.
Right, which is interesting because I think the point is Arizona is a red state.
Yeah.
So
generally.
Yeah, generally, although it's kind of
purple, but you know,
you know, so they could be more of a flip flop. But for this, it passed. Whereas in California, which is they say blue, but you know,
right? But there's too many rich folk there.
Too many rich folks, and many rich folks who are probably Republican.
Yeah.
So I think that's the difference here. That's slightly, you know. So, you know, so I think that, but I think it's very interesting that, you know, California is known as a blue state, but the argument I think, you know, the authors of this article are making kind of, I think they're going to get into that. So let me continue in what they're saying. Despite its promise, or perhaps because of it, Prop 208 didn't last long. The year after voters approved 208, the state legislature dropped down tax brackets to nullify its effects. The year after that, the state Supreme Court declared the initiative unconstitutional. The effects of these developments have been politically devastating. Rather than being enraged at the flouting of democracy at the state capitol, Arizonans have greeted the gutting of 208 with resignation and demobilization. After the high water mark in 2018, teachers' public image suffered during the COVID-19 pandemic, and now the signature accomplishment of the years of knocking doors has been erased. In most parts of the country with an initiative process, ballot initiatives offer a bright spot in an otherwise depressing political vista. The same is true in Arizona, where debt relief and in-state tuition for DACA students prevailed this November. But the Grand Canyon State offers a cautionary tale for any campaign that seeks to redistribute money and resources from the 1% to the majority. The rich, many will be unsurprised to hear, have better tax lawyers than most. They can spend money on the front end to stifle redistributive efforts, mostly in the form of television ads and lawsuits against initiative campaigns, as they can almost never marshal ground games. But they can also spend on the back end to chip away, or in the case of Prop 218, completely gut any tax policy they don't like. They are well organized, they have the necessary connections, and they won't stop until they get what they want. David does indeed sometimes win, as Marshall Gaines has reminded us, but it is a lot harder when he plays by Goliath's rules, and Goliath doesn't mess around when you come for his money. Recently, Massachusetts passed the Fair Share Amendment, a remarkable similar initiative to Arizona's Prop 208. It creates a 4% tax on annual income over $1 million to fund public education, transportation, and infrastructure repair. As in Arizona, the initiative was backed solidly by organized labor, and it passed with precisely the same majority of 52%. As also with Prop 208, the opposition had a difficult time messaging, as most Massachusetts residents do not earn over $1 million a year. The Massachusetts Teacher Association is right to celebrate the victory as a reason for profound hope, as the Arizona Education Association did with Prop 208. But the lesson from Arizona is that the true victory will be in defending the Fair Share Amendment, not just in winning it. Strip away the partisan identifications and voters will overwhelmingly choose to redistribute wealth. But often the confusing and veiled machinations of state legislatures can swiftly undermine such choices unless there is sustained pressure on legislators. I think that's a key point, and I think we'll talk about that in a minute.
Machinations. Another good word.
Ballot initiatives can pass policies that politicians can or won't, but on their own, there are no silver bullet. The more impact an initiative has in rebalancing resources and power, the more likely it is to face the coordinated efforts of the state legislature, judiciary, and Chamber of Commerce. Initiative campaigns that propose redistributing wealth must therefore be prepared to defend their policy before, during, and after it wins at the ballot. For the unions and community organizations that back the Fair Share Amendment, then, the real victory will be in getting the vote to stick, and that will require returning to the roots of organizing, strategic social disruption that makes leaving the Fair Share Amendment alone the more attractive option to the powers that be.
Would that include things like strikes, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha. So
yes.
Here's my, not to like derail too, I mean, this is about ballot initiatives. The issue is getting things on ballot initiatives. Every state's going to be different because like it's also, you have to wait for a ballot.
Right.
You know, so like that to me is also part of the problem. I mean, you know, I don't see why. I mean, me personally, this goes along with like election reform in general, especially with ballot initiatives, which this is also goes part and parcel with that. That like, I think you need to fix a lot of that structure before it's as viable as I wish it was, if that makes sense. Like, you need to fix the structure of like, we should be able to have a ballot initiative whenever the fuck we want, because it's what the fucking people should fucking decide, you know? And as long as you can make voting for those ballot initiatives easy and available and accessible, it shouldn't be a problem. I mean, American Idol seemed to fucking make this work, so, you know.
Here's the thing with this, though, and we had the discussion on Monday night when we were, I think, talking about this in relation to other things. You know, Massachusetts passed a ballot initiative regarding a variation, I'm going to say, of Medicare for All, which Sabby has talked about in her stream. There are people who I think are very much against state-supported Medicare for All for obvious reasons in this article as it describes here. It's obviously going to come under a lot more scrutiny. It's obviously going to come at a lot more fighting in terms of, you know, and I think I loved how this article kind of lays it out. It's like uh, the the oligarchs do not want to get rid of their money. So they're going to do everything that they can to stop it. And even if it passes, and I think this was the argument that I made, not argument, but this is what I was talking about with you privately. And we see this all the time, especially like with legislation, is that like take Biden, for example, people, went to bat for him and voted him in. And then once he was voted in, people just kind of, okay, we're done and we're going home. And now look at the shit of what he's doing right now, So Roger's in the chat. What's up, Roger? Yes, we're talking about the article that you tagged me in. So please, if you have anything to add, please let us know in the chat. But I think the article makes it clear, and that's the key that I think we don't talk about on the left regarding organizing. It's that I made this example again, not bad, not a good example, but it's like when you have a baby, when you have the baby, you don't just leave it out into the wolves to fend for itself. You gotta watch over it, protect it. You gotta stay on it. To make sure that baby thrives and lives and grows in accordance to how it should be. Same thing with legislation that's passed, or you can argue same thing that you should be doing with politicians.
I also think actively using whatever power you have to take more power, also good, because I don't think we have the proper tools as a proletariat to deal with these sort of things, especially when there's problems with those specific actions, So
one of the pros I can say for ballot initiatives is on the state level, and generally, or even on the local level, depending on what it is. For example, for me, and I talked about Empower Ed, the organization that I'm a part of yesterday. I know people on the State Board of Ed personally.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the new members of the State Board of Education was in Empower Ed, and I worked with him for the last couple of years. So basically, when he won his seat, a few weeks ago, he had his watch party. I went to it, and I told him, I'm not going to be easy on you. Now that he's on the other side of the table where I would give my, my data collection as far as talking about issues within the education DC field in DC, he's been with me having those debates. Now he's on the other side of the table, and now he has to listen to me in that role. But I have personal connection with him. I can talk to him about these issues. On the federal level, you have no connection with the people that you voted in.
Yeah.
Once they're in, they're trapped in that Congress bubble. You have no connection with them at all. And even if they come to visit a part of their constituency, you still don't have any access to them. So the benefit of ballot initiatives to me is that because they're run on the state level, number one, they're a lot more they're easier to organize around certain issues. You have, and I think it also forces people to connect with their local politics, which I think is very lacking. And I think that's another issue we don't necessarily talk about on the left or in general. We're so hyper-focused on what happens on the federal level, but we don't even know who our city councilman people are. Or we don't even know who's on our school board on the local level. We don't care about that, but we care about Biden and Trump. Ultimately, the people that live in your city and town have the most direct influence of what's happening in your life, and you should know who those people are. So if anything, ballot initiatives forces people to kind of hunker down into what's happening personally in their state, and it's easier to organize around those issues. And the argument that I can make is, especially for ballot initiatives such as Medicare for All or a free minimum wage, as I said, once you get those in, you got to stay on it. You can't just be like, oh, we won and go home. Like, you have to make sure, because, you know, like, I'll also say this as an anecdote. We had a ballot initiative for increasing minimum wage for tip workers. I think it was back in 2018, 2017 in DC. At that time, I think it passed by 50, it was in the 50s%. So just barely got the majority. And then the city council repealed that. So we didn't get it. But it got on the ballot again this year. And obviously, due to the pandemic, you know, whatever else, you know, I'm sure people would have felt more sympathetic, you know, to tip workers now. Like, I didn't expect, you know, for it to pass, honestly, but it won by a bigger margin this time around, you know? And now, from what I understand, the mayor said in a tweet, like, oh, I'm happy that this passed, but I need to talk to, essentially, she said, I don't remember the exact tweet, but basically she was like, oh, I need to talk to the restaurant lobby. So that was kind of like, okay, you're trying to pull some shit again, you know? So point that I'm making is, as the article says, when regarding ballot initiatives, it's a great organization tool to kind of elevate a lot of these progressive policies. But once you do, you have to be on it, as the article says, before, during, and after it passes. Like, don't go to sleep on it, because, you know, obviously, especially when you're trying to redistribute wealth, you know, people who are making money do not want to give that up, and they will fight you for it. So I think, again, like, is it perfect? No. And I will say this, like, should we continue to fight for progressive policies on the federal level? Absolutely. And, you know, and I think we definitely should continue to do that. That being said, right now we're in a lame duck Congress. We have new leadership who is extremely hostile to progressive policies. Ro Khanna basically said, regarding, I'm using Medicare for All, for example, there is no way that Medicare for All is going to pass at all. And even if it did, with Biden in office right now, he said that he would veto it. So right now, we're kind of stalled here. So we need to look at other strategies in order for us to get, if at minimum, elevate the conversation. I'm talking about Medicare for All specifically. Like, we need to regroup and kind of reconnect on the local and state levels, elevate these issues again. And I think ballot initiatives, again, they're not perfect. And I'm not saying that, you know, like, we should look to that only, but it's just one tool in the midst of other tools that we should have access to in order to elevate these progressive policies that we want.
I mean, I think with one of our favorites, Ture, you know, organizing what we're for, I think, you know, there's definitely talk among the indie space of solutions for things. And I think that, like, using the power that's available to you now, right, which is like organizing for, let's say, ballot initiatives. And I don't even think it has to be, like, there is an argument that M for All shouldn't be done at the state level. I do think there is some points there that, because of how it can be funded and, you know, state boundary laws, stuff like that, as far as business is concerned, like, I think there's some truth to that could be dealt with in both scenarios. Like, I'm not saying that that's, you know, not the case either, but, like, case by case basis, some of that, like, may not be great state level, but I think state level gaining the power to say something, or things like election integrity, or, you know, better voting situations in that state, you know, I think that that's like organizing for those initiatives, because essentially, like, there's nothing necessarily. I don't know I don't know the like specifics on how to do any of that, as far as like how to get something to be a ballot initiative, but you know, and state by state, it's going to be different.
Right, but I think the conversation should be had. And
Yes.
again, we shouldn't rely on that alone. As I said,
Yeah.
and I think Roger said he's gonna hit us up with something. But
Okay.
you know, but it's a tool out of many as far as organization that we should look into. And I think especially right now, within the next couple of years, as I said, right now, we're in a position where we need to regroup and kind of figure out strategy, which we don't do on the left really at all.
I also
Well, we
want the
do.
left.
It's more like the idea of mobilization, like, which is fine. But
Yeah.
what is that mobilization? What is the umbrella thing as far as the organization that we should be looking towards?
And
You
I
know,
think
just
I
having a
think the
one-off thing is not. It's not going to necessarily be good if it's leading towards something else.
I've also said we need to be creative here with solutions
Mhm.
on, like, especially with, like, I think the best case scenario is getting as many ballot initiatives as possible on the next ballot. So, like, what do you need to do? Like, what needs to be there? What could you sneak through, you know, that secretly could, like, help things, you know? Like, to me, that's the thing where it's like, if you can get the proletariat to understand why this is good, or, you know, things like being able to vote out politicians, like sneaking little stuff that like could get through somewhere, you know?
Right.
So, and talking amongst I think this is also why having your like values and like what you actually want to see happen that could help you or others, you know, group up among people that are for that issue, you know, so that you can talk amongst yourselves as openly as possible, so that you can get like things actually accomplished. I think that's the thing that we're seeing, that it's like awareness isn't the issue anymore on almost any issue. You know, people are aware. Now it's put a solution in their face that they'll choose. You know? So, speaking of choices, you brought some video evidence here, right?
Well, so this premiered today. So this was on Rising this morning. So Tesla and Figaro, who I think many of you know, stopped by the Rising Studios with Bree and Robbie today, and they talked about really, yeah, suave. So they talked about you know, how the squad basically just, you know, dropped their knees to Hakeem Jeffries, and he essentially won the House Minority Leadership unanimously. You know, so that's what. So just to give context, this is what they were talking about. But she does mention, but there's key parts, I think, in terms of thinking in terms of the local level. Now, I think that kind of where my argument is coming from. That we need to stop focusing so much on the federal, you know, and looking more to the local level. So I do want to play that part of the clip, because I think that it also does relate to ballot initiatives, or in kind of thinking about that too. Okay. So if you don't mind playing it, at least that part.
You know, we've all been alluding to this, but there was a moment 2 years ago that was described as the force the vote moment, where Democrats were in the same position Republicans are in now, where because the majority was so narrow and because you need 218 votes to confirm a speaker, the handful of squad members, the 4 to 8 of them, depending on how you count, had the power to actually hold up confirming Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House in exchange for any number of concessions, including committee appointments. We saw people like Katie Porter, who's been a very effective advocate for kind of populist economic policies, taxes on the rich, et cetera, get pushed out of the Financial Services Committee. They could have demanded all kinds of things, including a floor vote on Medicare for all, which was something that the progressives were talking about at the time. And they simply did not. They simply did not. And now when I have interviewed various progressives like Ro Khanna about whether or not they look back and have regrets, or why it is that Hakeem Jeffries is now in a position where he isn't being challenged by any progressives for leadership, they're giving the same excuse they gave 2 years ago, which is that just nobody's ready. We haven't prepared. We haven't had anybody positioning themselves in this way. And I wonder what you make of that. At a certain point, should progressives be looking to these people as leaders? At what point does it seem like almost like a planned ineptitude versus making genuine mistakes? Because they've had a lot of time to plan at this point.
Yeah, let's just be clear. This is a con game. I'll go ahead and say it. It's a con game. Bottom line, progressives love talking about Democrats and moderates and, oh, you Democrats, oh, you neoliberals, you don't get it, you're just blinded. No, so are you progressives. It is a con game. They have showed you time and time again that it's been all about funneling your money up and selling you a dream. My problem is not that I don't understand strategy. I run a strategic communications firm. I get strategy. I understand that things take time. My problem is, Bree, that they went out and lied to these people. They went out and lied to the progressive movement. They lied to folks who were poor, middle class, working class, and promised them a dream. I cannot stand a voluntary lie, whether that's Biden, who volunteered to pass to have the back of black people that nobody asked him to do, whether it is the progressives, Bernard Sanders, and everybody else that had people crying in the stands, giving their last $2, whether it is on the Trump side of selling people on hopes and dreams of some magical wall that would be paid for by Mexico. I cannot stand the volunteer lie. These people know exactly what they're doing. They're worse than the moderates, because you're taking the last $2 from the poor and working class, knowing damn well that once you get in the office, you're going to flip the script. And that's the problem that I have. Why not run on the truth? Why not run on the fact that saying, hey, we're going to get in, it's going to take us time. But they did not do that. They sold a hope and dream and a con game. And that is why I have such an issue with the progressive movement.
Time to play with.
I mean,
why
not?
He's back.
That is the question. What are they thinking? Is it are they insincere when they say they're committed to these things? Is it it's all about just raising money and then they don't particularly care about supporting a cause? Or they would say they're being more strategic than you, right? That they have some master plan that you're not privy to, or that they have a long-term plan, or they just
can't defeat,
or they don't know what they've given up hope Pelosi, that it can work.
Yeah, crap. That's much, but it's no master plan. This is no rubbing of the hands. Oh, I got some master plan. The plan is the con game. Bottom line. This is why I keep trying to tell people it is important that you get involved on the local and the state level. As far as Congress, it's over with. It's a wrap. Get local and state leadership. When I say local, I'm talking about city commissioners that have executive power to make the decisions, that can make effective change right now in your city. Get on board with folks who are running for state house, a state rep, state senate, that you have a little bit more access to. Because as far as Congress is concerned, I think we're behind the ball, and it's too far gone to right the ship. Unless you have that local leadership that is putting pressure on those folks in Congress that say either you do or else, or we're going to make sure that you lose, nothing will ever change. The only thing that a politician's fear is the ability to lose their seat, period.
Yeah. Why is she wearing her Power Ranger uniform though? That's what I want to know.
Also, you can't be playing with the screen. So
I can be.
Yes, you can, but BTS, you can't be playing with your new toys.
You're not my real dad.
But anyway, point that Tesla brought here, I think is very apparent. Like, we talk about strategy a lot, and obviously we know the oligarchs have their strategy planned out to attack us. And we need to develop our own in terms of how we, again, we made this case with the federal student loan debt. We knew, and this was the issue that we had with Mike Figueredo, we knew that it's going to get blocked. Whether he used the Higher Education Act or whether he used the HEROES Act. there obviously are conservative federal judges that were going to block it. So if you're going to attack your enemy, why not attack them with the best possible shot of success? Especially if you know what they're up to. So I think, especially on the left, we need to kind of develop that same discipline in terms of we know who our enemies are. So the best thing we need to think about now is what do we need to do in order to kind of combat the games that they're going to play with us and not act surprised when they're like, oh, like, but we didn't know, like, they're going to have all this money and, like, they're going to get all their lawyers to attack this legislation and tank it. Like, we know that's what they're going to do. So if you know that, be prepared for that and stand up to it. And I think just overall, I think in regards to ballot initiatives, I think that's key. But I think you can make that case for anything in regard to politics. Like, you're not done, especially if by the grace of God, it gets voted in. Like, you still have to work at it because they're going to chip away at it to try to get rid of it or undermine it so that, it's a lesser value than what you intended it to be. And so, like I said, I think it's a way to kind of have people focus on local and state politics, but it can be a way as an organizational tool to elevate those issues on a federal level and having the backing of your state representatives to be like, look, this is what we're doing and people are happy. Why the fuck are you not doing this on the federal level?
Yeah.
So that's but I think again, it's a tool, one tool of many that we need to use.
Well, I think that's the thing for me where it's like, we're in a fight, correct?
Right.
At what point do you start looking for weapons? You got to find some stuff to use.
Right.
Like, find the tools that you can actually work with. You know?
So, to people who are knocking ballot initiatives, I get the arguments against them. But, like, again, if you're looking at tools in the toolbox, like, you're not going to knock a hammer because it doesn't screw a nail. It has a certain job and a certain purpose. And you have to know how to use it effectively and use all the tools in your toolbox effectively to get the maximum output from your case. So, so my counter to people who kind of knock ballot initiatives, or I think especially thinking in terms of like nothing can work on the state level, I think again, along with that, we need to talk about like what organizing actually is. Because I don't think we often talk about that enough. But then, like, because as Heslin said, there's strategy involved, which we don't often think about. Like, we don't think long term. We just think in terms of, like, we're just gonna, do this thing and pray and hope that it works out. And then we get shocked and then we get knocked down easily, and it demoralizes people. Like, not to say that's not going to happen, but you got to be prepared for that. And I wouldn't say it's a fight; it's a straight up war on these streets.
Well, I think people with organizing have a very unusual thing where it's like organizing to pressure a politician, right? Is not to me like there's very specific use cases, right? But it's not like awareness isn't the issue. In that regard, I don't think. I think the politicians know. I think the people know, right? I think the thing to do is like, first of all, we got to have better communication. Like that's going to be a thing that we just need to do, especially on these issues of what we're doing. What can we do? While also supporting everyone to keep doing that, because mutual aid is like also needed. And I think,
and again, to your point, it's easier to talk to representatives on the state level.
Yeah.
Because you have better access to them than you do to politicians on the federal, So again, that's where ballot initiatives can make an impact, in that regard. So, actually, I was just checking, and Benjamin Case is a researcher, but he as an organizer, and so he does this. So I'm actually going to contact him to see if we can have him on to talk more about this.
Okay.
Because I think, again, this is a worthwhile discussion to have. But we need some experts to kind of talk about, I think, this, but in terms of how to strategize and organize effectively, so that, if we ever have a forced to vote moment again,
like, it needs to be done now.
Right. We need to prepare for it right now. Like, we should be.
We got to think a couple of steps ahead, I feel like, is what you're saying.